Yalla Habibi.
It's good to be here at the main blockchain event of this year.
You get to speak to the smartest people like you trying to figure this out, but also the people on stage. They're the experts. What more can you ask? It's a brilliant, brilliant event, and you'll come away with lots of new ideas and a better understanding of this incredible exponential world. So we get all of that, all in one place. See you at Token 2049 in Dubai.
Consensus Hong Kong 2025 is where the global crypto community converges to shape the next era of Web3. From February 18th through the 20th, Hong Kong becomes the meeting point for leaders across finance, technology, and digital assets. This isn't just a conference, it's where deals are made, partnerships are forged, and new opportunities emerge. Consensus features exclusive networking lounges, expert-led sessions, and invaluable insights from top industry voices. Whether you're expanding your network, building your brand, or closing your next big deal, this is the event that moves markets. Visit coindesk.com/consensus-HK to secure your spot and use Real Vision 15 for 15% off. Don't miss your chance to be part of the industry's defining moment.
Hello, everyone. We are back again, another episode of REKT Vision. We did the question time with OSF and Mando last week. We're back on the public show this week. OSF, you were in Miami last week. Maybe we'll start there. How was that?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, we spoke about it briefly on the last show, I believe. But I had a really good time. I think I would like to host more events next time. As I was just telling the guys before the show, I think the way that it worked is like different people hosted their own things. Obviously, I hosted the golf. Sergio did a run. I think Julian did like a catamaran thing. Raul had a couple of dinners. That for me worked really well. Just having like smaller kind of like breakout groups during the time. So yeah, I would like to. We only had 3 lucky members for the golf this time round, but next year I'd love to open it up to more people. And maybe we should do a 5-a-side game. Actually, I'll do that.
That's what
as
I
well.
was just thinking. I was like, what would I have done if I'd come? And I was like, oh, maybe we were on a 5-a-side tournament where you played golf.
I'm basically just going to do activities that I don't get to do anymore since being married and have a child, and just do the first Real Vision thing. So it's like 5-a-side match, do a bit of golf.
You aren't able to play golf anymore?
Well, I am, but like I had to retire from football. What else could we do? A bit of table tennis. Just watch some football. Like if there's some football on the weekend, we'll just play some drinking games. Just
guys, we're just gonna put on Gillette Soccer Saturday for
exactly.
That's gonna be Real Vision. Okay.
I've got all sorts of plans for the next one.
And what was the sentiment like? Maybe we'll go into that, because I know it's more left curve than most, but like, what was the general sense from people?
Very bullish. The sentiment was very bullish. Like when we went for dinner, I sat at a table and I asked everyone what they thought the highs for Bitcoin would be, and where it would end this year. And pretty much everyone was within the 200 to 250K range for Bitcoin. Everyone was like, risk on, what alts do I buy, etc. So it was very bullish. Like I felt like I was the least bullish person there, to the point where I almost felt like I was bearish, and did a panel with Sergio and Keith, and same thing then. Like everyone was bullish, they were both bullish, and I was like, I'm bullish, but like I'm a bit more measured, and certain things need to happen for us to unlock higher levels. And I kind of talked about how I thought we were in for a chop, which I felt like disappointed people. But yeah, it just seems like the sentiment there, I think, was a microcosm of the sentiment in the market, where I think people seem to have this expectation where Bitcoin reserve and buying of Bitcoin, all this stuff should have happened yesterday, and we should now already be at 200. And I think that's kind of an explanation of why we're seeing the way things are right now. So I think it was good. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it probably relates to how much Bitcoin you own at any one time. Like if you still own Bitcoin, you're probably like, we've got so much more to go. We're going up to 200K. if you're in ETH, obviously it's felt like a tougher cycle. Solana's kind of more tied to a lot more of the degen stuff, which has had a very, very tough few weeks since Trump released his coin. So I think it just depends what you're paying attention to. But I do feel as though Bitcoiners think we're up only. This is going to be a bit of a range, like we've seen 3 or 4 times over the last 2 or 3 years, and then we're going to break out again.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And yeah, I just think Bitcoin is possibly in its own league now. I mean, it is in its own league. The positive catalysts we have this year for crypto still feel very Bitcoin specific. I know there are some other things like Solana ETF, or if the digital asset stockpile, includes other things other than Bitcoin. But for me personally, like there's nothing that really matches the idea of countries fighting over themselves to buy Bitcoin. Like that's just another level to me. So for something that has a fixed supply.
So maybe that's where we'll start, and that's kind of what the title was today. Bitcoin dominance has just kept on going higher. If you bring up that chart, we had a brief dip below, down to kind of the mid 50s in November, December time. We had big moves in some of the more dino style coins, things like XRP. Solana had a decent move, and then over the last month, particularly since Trump, Bitcoin dominance has just been surging, and which kind of culminated on Sunday night last week, where we had a very, very bearish reaction to potential tariffs coming in. Looking back on it now, it just seems so ridiculous at all. But there was a brief moment where ETH dipped to 2,000, Solana dipped to 175, I think, and Bitcoin dipped to 90K. And in that move, Bitcoin dominance actually went up in a wick to like 65, 66. It dipped back down, and then it's been slowly moving back higher again. So we're back up to like the 62% range for Bitcoin dominance. And in that world, we've seen all the previous left curve trades, sectors get decimated. So meme coin market cap has lost $45 billion in 3 weeks. It peaked over 100 billion, kind of 130, I think, it's 120. It's now into the 70s. You had the AI agent sector, which was peaked at around 18, is now down to just over 7. And that was kind of holding its own around 12 or 13 until this move. And then you've seen kind of various other coins, even the L1s, like ETH BTC is at multi-year lows now. It's only rebounded to kind of 2,750 area, even with Bitcoin at 100K. Solana dip is still kind of hanging out around 200. And then you have a bunch of other more like Dino L1s, which have performed fairly poorly as well. Very, very weak reaction to all of that sort of stuff. What's your take? Firstly, to that one day move, and then where do you see the market kind of going now?
Yeah, I just think we're probably going to see more of the same for a while. I can't see what catalyst there is to reverse this train, to reverse this move. You know what I mean? Like, as we said at the beginning, it's just going to be more Bitcoin stuff. Like maybe if Solana ETF is successful and it opens the door for other ETFs, but I just think there's diminishing returns there. I think people have just been beaten up so badly in alts. Like, what's the argument now to buy it? I guess there's an argument to say, oh, this stuff is down so much, you can take a punt at it. But it just seems like all new capital seems to be flowing to Bitcoin and nothing else. Like Bitcoin and possibly Sol, but it Sol alone isn't enough to change Bitcoin dominance. I don't know, like what, if you're a new person into crypto, like what makes you buy an alt here?
I just love how we've just gone from this show being very left curve to now just like full on Bitcoin maxi because you now own Bitcoin.
It's really been a full evolution since the very first show of me just owning meme coins to now just owning Bitcoin. But I mean, I'm just going with what the market is telling me, and maybe there's a time to take the other side of the market. But my problem is, like, at some point I do think Bitcoin dominance falls and alts rally, but I just don't know what. Like, I don't know what's going to rally. My bet, as we've spoken about in the last couple of weeks, my bet is on AI coins, and I own some AI coins. But again, even there, it's like, which coins do you own, and how do you know what you buy isn't replaced by something else in a few months? Because that, if you're betting on alt season or alts outperforming Bitcoin dominance dropping, etc., that's not like an overnight trade or a 2-week trade. That's a multi-month trade. So you need to, whatever you hold, you need to feel comfortable it's something that will hold and maintain its value and maintain its mind share and narrative over a longer period of time. And that's been the hardest thing in this market. It's just,
that's been consistent for a while. I think it's important to talk about where we were like a month ago, because obviously we're super bullish on a bunch of these sort of stuff a month ago. You can't just now suddenly be like, oh, I'm Bitcoin maxi, I don't want to touch anything. What has changed from now until then? There has to be some level of consistency here. And I think the main thing has got to be the Trump coin, like you said. That has meant that it really did change, which we kind of mentioned 2 weeks ago, that really changed the market dynamic, in that people were very, very scared about new coins coming. Even today, there's talk about like a Kanye West coin even dropping, and you got to wonder like what that would do to existing Solana coins. So I think that it was kind of a perfect storm there of people suddenly scared about new issuance. And then the second thing I would say here is that Pump Fun has created coins, at least on Solana, with only like 1 or 2, well, sometimes even less, but 1% liquidity pools, right? And the third thing is none of the major exchanges have listed them for spot. So when people rush to the exit in these coins, I have not seen a sell-off like this since I've been in crypto. This is like what this did to alts was similar to like an FTX style move. Stuff is down 90% in 3 or 4 weeks. That is an absolutely insane move. So I think it's kind of more of an appreciation of the lack of liquidity in these coins when things go wrong, and probably that's also why they go up so high so quickly. But I think those are the two main things that's changed. I do still like AI as like the strongest narrative, or one of the strongest altcoin narratives here. But there is that nagging feeling in the back of my head that we could get wrecked. We could get wrecked if another coin comes out. But they're down a lot, and I kind of just feel like they're kind of down to where they were in, let's say, November or December, early December, when I was looking at them there. So like, and I still really like this narrative, but you just have to, and then it just becomes a case of, yes, you have to play ones that you think have the best long-term traction. That's a much more difficult one. Even Fartcoin, which was kind of the strongest meme one, got slightly decimated in this market. But I do think those are the ones that will probably bounce the strongest. What I did move to 2 or 3 weeks ago was after the Melania coin, which kind of, when I told you I had a big bag of like ARK, for example, and then when that dropped 40% after Melania dropped the coin, I was like, you can't hold these coins through that. Now they are all down 80%. I moved to revenue producing kind of coins largely. So I moved to things like Radium, to Hype, to Jupiter, or kind of the big three. Those have performed slightly better. So I still like that bit of the market. So ones where you're kind of selling, and JLP obviously, which has been the vast majority of my portfolio for a long time. But those are coins which you earn just from trading taking place. I am tempted to kind of move some back into some of these coins now. Like the setup here is that stable coins just continues to go higher. We're about to reach $220 billion of stablecoins right now. That is just up only. Number of addresses and amount traded keeps on breaking out to new highs. So like volume. And yet the altcoin sector is absolutely decimated. So there seems to be this big disconnect between what I would call like underlying fundamentals of crypto adoption and altcoins. And maybe that was slightly the other way, or too far the other way with like how far some of these altcoins got value. But I do look at them, some of them this week, even today, and I was like, they are down a lot. And I do think they're going to be the strongest altcoin sectors.
I agree. I definitely agree. And I still agree with you on AI. And I think because perhaps it was a bit of a consensus trade within the casino crowd, that's why it's gotten hit so badly. And because all the casino money is there, every time there's something else that's a liquidity suck, that also gets affected as well. But I've been, I bought some ARK and AI16Z last week in that big sell-off we had over the weekend, I think it was. And my plan is to keep averaging down on that stuff because I do think, actually one of the things from the Real Vision crypto gathering, one of my takeaways from that was some of the larger wallets I spoke to, whether they were funds managing money or just like high net worth people were very, very focused on AI. And actually it felt like it was people who'd missed that first move in December, or that first move in November, December, and then sort of just started doing the work in January, seem bullish, but haven't really yet deployed while the price has been going down. And I think there's capital to come into it that views it as an entry point rather than capital where it's like, oh, I'm down really bad on this, we're going to sell and move on. Like, I think my view on the AI stuff is it's going to be a transfer of coins and potentially wealth from the casino crowd to a more sophisticated institutional crowd. I think that's kind of what's happening right now. But I know of at least 3, possibly even 4 funds that we've spoken about who are deploying in that sector right now, I think. I'm being very patient in terms of averaging down and not just like aping all in. So I think that stuff is going to be a good space to buy. I think you just have to be patient and try and lower your average cost as much as possible, given the price action. But at some point this year, I think we're going to have a big resurgence of that too, and through all-time highs, I think. And all-time highs on a lot of those coins, by the way, is like a 10x on some coins, I think now. So,
right. Well, but I guess the technical setup is what I'm basically trying to say is that everything else kind of points to more of an altcoin market here, right? Everything else points to when you have stable coins going this high, when you've had Bitcoin just breaking through an all-time high, right? And then you have the amount of DEX volume going up only, the amount of active addresses going up only. You would assume that that's a market where lots of people are coming in and want to trade altcoins. And if we haven't topped, like if you don't think this is a cycle top, I'm not a big believer in like the just Bitcoin dominance, right? Like being the metric of an altcoin cycle, because I agree there's thousands of coins that get issued each day, but it would really, really surprise me if Bitcoin at this stage is going to be the best performing asset. Like, if it's going to do a 2x, like, and nothing else moves, because that would be really wild to have. What, you just have Bitcoin and a bunch of people in stables doing nothing? Kind of feels like people are going to probably punt around with some stuff, right?
I think so. I don't disagree with that. I think my only point is I think it will take time. I don't think we're going to see it for a while. And because we don't see it for a while, we just don't know which alts are the ones to play. Which is why I think Bitcoin dominance will remain elevated for a while. Like, it's not this, what you're saying is not going to happen tomorrow or next week, probably not even next month. Could it happen in 6 months? Yeah. But like in 6 months, we don't know what the landscape in crypto is changing so quickly. And there are so many things to happen this year. We just don't know which sector within altcoins will do really well. So it's hard to, what I'm saying is it's hard to put that trade on now, because I do think there'll be a lot of alpha within sectoral alpha within the altcoin space. It's not just going to be all alts higher, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, yes, this is like, it could potentially be like owning Pepe 6 months before it breaks out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in that time, Bitcoin can go a lot higher.
I
So
guess what you could say is maybe like the alt L1 trade could be the right trade, like own some of the L1s, and maybe they outperform against Bitcoin. Like maybe that's the safest way to play it over 6 months, because people will still buy Solana, Sui, AVAX, Cardano, like, you know, all that stuff, XRP, all that stuff still does trade with the market. So maybe that's the best way to play it, rather than getting deeper into like alt sectors, if that makes sense. Just like stick to L1s.
you can stick to L1s, although maybe we should go through that, which is kind of
ETH.
what happens to ETH this week. There was, if it felt bad to own ETH before this week, it definitely felt bad during this week. ETH is at 2,750, so it's kind of unchanged over the last few years, right? Like, you could have owned ETH for many years now and kind of be flat on your money, which is kind of wild. I think it's like 5 years is flat to where it was, so like 2020 time. What do you think about ETH here? Is the market just telling you that you don't trust it? Do you look at it now? There's been some talk this week that, like, because a lot of the more left curve stuff that was happening on Solana is so down, that maybe people will return to like safety, or return to, or the relative like safety of like TVL, which ETH has. What's your take? Do you think now's the time to buy ETH?
I think we could see a near-term outperformance of ETH, just given how much it's underperformed. Like I could see ETH BTC. Where is it now? Like 0.027 or 28 or something like that. Like, I could see that going back towards 0.03 or above. But it's still hard for me to see like a material outperformance. It's hard for me to see that ratio go back towards 0.06 without a
That'd be
big,
wild.
yeah, you would need like a really big catalyst. And if I think of like what big catalysts there are to get alts to perform, maybe it's an ETF, but guess what? ETH already has an ETF and it's not really seeing that much inflow. So unless that changes, unless people start thinking, oh, now it's time to start buying ETH and they can build a story, then that could happen. But what I think ETH really needs is not something different in the tech. I think it just needs marketing. I think it needs an ETH Foundation needs like a revamp, and I know it's maybe going through that or something like that, but it just needs better marketing. It needs, you know, Solana's done a really good job of onboarding normies and building this culture and making it seem like a fun place to be. And ETH doesn't have any of that. It just seems like this sort of like academic thing, which is not attracting retail investors, despite it having an ETF. So I think like they need like a whole new like marketing plan, and they need to use the advantage that they have over other alts and having an ETF and figuring out ways to educate and reach out to people who perhaps are in Bitcoin ETFs, so they can understand ETH better. Like it needs better branding. I can't believe I'm saying this, because I know this is probably against everything that like
they're trying to do
ETH
it.
stands for. Yeah, but that's what it needs. Yeah.
So maybe to kind of bring all this together, I think a lot of people would have had part of their portfolio in high risk stuff, just like me and you did. They're down quite a lot over the last few weeks. How would you rebuild the portfolio? Let's start objectively, like you've got 100% meme coins and they're down. What do you think you should be owning for the next few months?
So this is what let's say it's 6 month time horizon.
Yeah, let's be like, look, I'm down, I'm not dead. I need to work out if I should be holding on to this stuff. What amount should I keep in my memes or AI, or like how would you rebuild a portfolio?
I would say, let's say like 50% Bitcoin. I would say 20, I'd say maybe like, okay, this is like a slightly more defensive portfolio, but let's say like 60% Bitcoin, 30% other L1s, and 10% AI. That's how I would structure it. And I honestly wouldn't buy just normal meme coins here. Like I really wouldn't. For a 6-month hold, I wouldn't. Like if you're in the trenches and you're gambling meme coins and you're trading them in and out, fine. But I wouldn't buy meme coins here. And I'm not just saying that as like a mid-curver. Like obviously, if you've listened to the show, the entire of last year, my entire portfolio was in meme coins, and that's when I was pretty bullish on that space. But I'm not that bullish at all on being able to buy and hold a standard meme coin for the next 6 months. So I don't have any meme coins. Like if I own anything that's meme related, it's within AI. It has some AI connectivity to it, like stuff like REKT. But other than that, I don't have any meme coins.
So stick to AI, basically, because you think that's going to be the strongest bounce. So I think I still think there's some good altcoin stories there. But I think knowing this from previous kind of, let's say, chop periods, the ones that outperform are generally the revenue producing ones. Like I remember like RRB through that period. So I would definitely get into something like Bitcoin or JLP. Like JLP is probably my favorite asset right now, which is the basket of majors plus which earns you yield on Jupiter perps. Then I would probably have about, like you said, 40 or 50% in that. Then I'd look at stuff like on the L1 side, like you said, something like Hype might be interesting here because of the amount of revenue it's generating. I'd look at Radium, I'd look at Jupiter. So I probably have 20, 30% of my bag in that. And then maybe the final 20%. I kind of agree with you. I think I'd pick AI memes. So I'd pick something like Filecoin or Go, but because I think that's the only thing I can really feels like it's the surest bet over a 6-month period, but it's tough. If I was owning it for like the next month, stuff like AI16Z or ARK, like AI16Z is now beat Solana as the most popular open source protocol ever created by a crypto team. It does feel as though the optionality of something like that, 350 million, seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
So if I was owning it for the next month, I do think I'd look at a lot more of these AI utility coins and be like, maybe I'll play them. But the outside risk is, it sounds as though we're going to get a coin from tons of different people still. Like, and there are stables now kind of waiting in the wings to buy that a bit more than there were last time. Like Solana stables have broken out to 12 or 13 billion, I think now. So that's kind of been up only. But I do think we'll get a coin from Kick. We'll get a coin from maybe Twitch. We'll get a coin from GameStop. We'll get a coin maybe from Kanye West. We're like, it's very, very clear we're going to get a lot of new coins in this world, and you have to be wary of that even for short-term holds in those.
It feels like, we've seen some of those coins come, and so far they've all come on Solana. Like I find it very hard to think any of these coins won't come on Sol. So that kind of makes me pretty bullish on Sol as well. It just feels like, if you're gambling the stuff, you need to have liquid Sol, and I think more and more people will realize they need to have liquid Sol. Like that's the other trade that I think is still really interesting here. The idea of maybe Sol FDV flipping ETH. That's something I think is worth, especially with Sol back down now towards 200. Like I think that's another thing worth thinking about, because we're almost 50% off, 30-40% off the highs that we saw earlier this year when Trump came. Imagine if you have, I agree with you. I think we're going to see all these all this big stuff release coins by the end of the year. And I think it's all going to be on Sol.
Yeah. I really like Sol. I continue to think that is one of my favorite of the majors. JLP as an asset is generally geared towards Sol as well. So if you want to own kind of Sol exposure in a basket, which is geared mainly towards Sol, that's not a bad one. But I think obviously got the unlocks this month, next month. Then I think it's in a good spot. I still think it's a really good spot. It got caught in, let's say, the crosswinds of this move in Bitcoin dominance, but I do think that's relatively strong. The only other one that's come up on this whole revenue generating L1s is Tron. I don't know if you've ever looked at that, which has been a coin associated with Justin Sun, HGX, but just because they are now seemingly tied to World Liberty Financial, and it feels unlikely that we're going to get a situation where US regulation is that tough. I think the SEC looks like it's dropping a lot of cases at the moment. It's now looking like it's going to accept a bunch of ETFs. It suddenly feels as though that one, which has easily been the biggest revenue generator out of the L1s, that one's held up okay. And I've looked a bit more at it. I don't know if you can buy it on US exchanges, but you can buy it on you can buy it on a bunch of other different more international exchanges. So that's the only other one I'm looking at. It does feel as though we are going to get like you said, just if you are just focused on Bitcoin though, it does feel as though we are going to get a bunch of states now FOMOing in. I think there's nearly 15 states which have active Bitcoin reserve bills at the moment. And they are seemingly like fighting it out for some who's going to be the first to implement some sort of Bitcoin reserve. You had the Czech National Bank, the actual central bank came out and said they're going to allocate part of their reserves to Bitcoin. That's the first major central bank I've seen. And you have various companies around the world coming in and saying, yeah, we're going to allocate part of our treasury to Bitcoin. There is something to be said that like, stop trying to degen so hard when you have such an obvious trade sitting there, in that you have this global game theory of everyone trying to buy Bitcoin.
You know, one of the best or easiest trades last year was the Bitcoin Solana Barbell. And I'm starting to think, well, not starting to think, I do think we're going to see that continue to be a strong trade this year. Like, I don't see how you go wrong. If you're bullish on the market, I don't see how you can go wrong with a trade like that. Just a Bitcoin Solana Barbell. And maybe you spend some of that SOL on doing sort of like the degen trading on the side, because it will, I think you're right. I think we're going to see so many coins on SOL. So you want to have liquid SOL to try and catch some of those, and then try, it's like in 2021, you trade NFTs to try and multiply your ETH, because that was the thing that kept going higher.
Yeah.
And last year, I don't really think most people traded meme coins to multiply their SOL. I felt like most people found meme coins to hold and try and just like make money. But maybe this year the game is to trade the meme coins to try and multiply your SOL, just build a big stack of SOL while you hold Bitcoin against it. Like, I think that's probably, and that feels like a good sweet spot to me if you're not trenching 24/7.
In a sideways market, Bitcoin and SOL Barbell does seem like one of the strongest. I think the second bit of this question really does become: is this a 6-month thing, or is it a 3-month thing, or is it a 2-month thing from here, or are we going to break out next month or this month? Because I do think that once Bitcoin hits a new all-time high and breaks out of like 110, then suddenly, just like when it was ranging for a while in last year, you saw all the degen activity really started to happen, like breaking out new highs when we hit a new high in Bitcoin. I do think that's when you want to start having a more risky portfolio. How long do you think this chop could be here? Do you think it's going to be one of the shorter chops? Like normally after like a really long, we had 9 months last year. If this is a bull market, you would assume that this one would be slightly shorter than that. And then maybe shorter after that, and that would be the continuation of a bull market. What's your sense? Are you locking down for 6 months? I think part of this is like a macro question, so maybe you need to see a slight resolution, or what were you looking for there? So like the big things that will take us maybe out of the range.
I think a 6-month chop could be on the cards, because yes, part of it is macro, and we'll see how that progresses over that time. We had the Michigan survey for inflation just now, which sent the markets back lower again after the payrolls number came in below expectations. So there are some, macro questions that I think not necessarily need to be answered, but perhaps we get better clarity over in that time, which will affect crypto. But I think for crypto itself to break out of this like choppy sell strength style price action, we need to get more headlines and clarity on Bitcoin reserve and all that stuff, which I think is going to take at least 6 months, if not longer. And I think we're going to see some headline volatility within that time period. Like, just like quote me on this and remember I said this. At some point between now and the next 6 months, we are going to get some headlines which will say Bitcoin reserve looks unlikely, or they can't do this, or they're facing some hurdles. There's going to be some sort of like negative headline which will make people start to question it. Like right now, everyone thinks it's going to happen. And I do think it probably will happen, but there's going to be something that will cast a greater amount of doubt in people's minds. And that's when I think we're going to get like a real shake or a real wobble. And that I think is going to be the best buying opportunity, because I do think they'll get it over the line. But you know, we had that with the whole ETF saga, right? The ETFs were going on for ages, and then you had moments where it was like, oh no, they're not going to do it anymore, or it's not going to get approved, and people were really questioning it. So, and that also goes to show, like, you know, right now maybe that doubt is a small part of people's minds. People just think it's going to take time, but if you have that wobble, it becomes a greater that probability, that weighting of doubt becomes greater, and it means when it does happen, you're going to see like a monster rally, like a much bigger rally than we anticipated. And that's kind of what I think is going to happen. And I think that's almost what needs to happen for us to get to these 200, 250 levels, because I think people need to lose that hope a little bit to get there. Right now, I think everyone just expects it still.
Yeah. I think the main things I'd be looking for here are the headlines really coming from David Sachs, like, or rumors of headlines that we're going to come to some sort of resolution of the of what's going to be included in the Bitcoin strategic reserve. I think that were probably the main ones. And then maybe some of the macro stuff, though it does feel like that's like drifting slightly away from us. I don't know if you've seen, but it just feels like inflation could be drifting slightly higher. It feels like the Fed's not going to be like that supportive. I don't think, maybe something breaks in an EM country, which causes massive stimulus. Maybe we get the swap lines, which Raul was talking about, you know, like maybe we get some sort of swap line between the US and Japan. But something's probably got to break a little bit there for that to happen, right? So maybe we get something around there from on a currency level, which looks like it could break out. Maybe the UK, similarly, the UK or Japan kind of feel like the obvious ones that people are looking at the moment. But for me, it feels like it's probably going to be a policy thing. So we're probably going to have to get some sort of legislation or something around the Bitcoin strategic reserve. That will be the main things I'm looking for. I'm bullish that it'll be less than 6 months. If this started at the start of the year, or maybe I don't know when this started, so maybe middle of December last year, this chop, then I think we could, by the end of the spring, we could hopefully be out of this.
I hope so. It would be nice, but I'm positioned for it to be done sooner. Like, I'm not max risk right now, but I'm happy if things go higher, but I'm mentally prepared for a 6 month chop and not getting myself excited. It feels like you can probably make a good bit of money just trading the range here, I think. That's
what I'm going to do. Largely, like, everyone thinks it's all over at 90, and everyone will be stupid euphoric at 110 or 106. And I think you can trade a decent range here and know you're not going to blow up. Yeah, I think that's right. But I think that range will, like, you're going to see that range narrow over time. I guess people call it a wedge, and then it's just going to take off. Okay, should we kind of go to the questions then here? Yeah, let's do questions. Before we head to the questions, we, as usual, just want to showcase some pro content on Real Vision Crypto. Earlier this week, we had Jamie Coots speak with Tony Placencia, who's a co-founder of Griffane. So if you are into AI coins, that's obviously been a big one with a lot of mind share. They spoke about the rise of AI agents and what else is coming in the space. Highly recommend you guys check out that video. It's available to pro crypto subscribers. You can sign up to watch it on realvision.com. All right, questions. If you were to invest in, this was from Jonathan D, if you were to invest in US-made crypto, that narrative from Trump, which would be your favorite coins? He likes Sol, Sui, and maybe some DJing and XRP.
But is there anything else you're looking at in the idea of like American-made coins?
The ones that have kind of been touted are Sol, XRP, Link, and Aave. I would say the ones that I hear about the most. The one I like the most is definitely Solana out of them all. So I would, if I'm just going to have a US centric approach, it would be Solana. Or arguably you could have like, this is why I kind of like Tron, because it's kind of like, so Justin Sun is the biggest investor in World Liberty Financial, and it's clearly kind of making friends there. So maybe that's kind of the outside chance of like something that will benefit from a Trump first approach to crypto. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think I'm not really familiar with like what other American coins are there are.
There's a really good graphic actually which shows there's a ton, but in terms of the ones that would ever
big
be
L,
it would just be the L ones.
Yeah, the big L ones. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, next question. It seems mainstream media is reporting on a Sol ETF approval. It implies that the SEC would take up to its maximum of 240-day review period. Do you think the pro-crypto stance on that the new admin has would fast track this? Wouldn't an approval near the end of the year be too close to the end of the peak? So do you think we could see a fast-tracked approval of the Solana ETF? Are you worried if it happens towards the end of the year, it's sort of towards the top, or after we've seen the best of the price action?
Yeah, I wouldn't assume that the SEC timelines of previous ETFs has much bearing on this one. Given they've approved the Bitcoin ETH ETF, I think the SEC is now this week has acknowledged Grayscale's applications for Solana and Litecoin ETFs. I think that process could be much quicker, much quicker. It doesn't need to be drawn out, and we could get approvals much sooner than 270 days, in my opinion.
I agree. I think these guys seem active in getting things done. Obviously, Hester Pierce at the SEC now has a bigger role in this stuff, and she seems pretty switched on and on it. So I don't think, I know they're talking about classification of stuff, what's a security, what's not security, etc. I don't think we need to wait for that for them to launch a Solana ETF. Let me put it that way. I think they could just go ahead and do it if there's enough demand. What's your take on World Liberty Finance buying $200 million worth of ETH, and Eric Trump's pro-ETH tweet, which said "thank me later," which was then soon edited to remove the "thank me later" part?
Yeah, I thought it was a very strange tweet, if I'm honest. Kind of felt like a KOL tweet after they've just bought some meme coin. I wouldn't read much into it. I think thinking that the Trumps will save ETH has been not a good trade. That's kind of what my view is. Like, if you own ETH because you're bullish that Eric Trump is going to save it, I kind of think that's a not a strong enough reason. So I think there's some possibility that gets included in the strategic reserve in the US, but ETH isn't US based, and apart from the DeFi stuff which World Liberty Financial is getting involved in, it may not pass the David Sachs kind of review process here of something that they would want to have a strategic reserve in. So I think there are surer bets there, basically, if you're going to play it.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think from what I've heard, they've obviously bought a lot of ETH, and they've bought a lot of ETH ecosystem coins as well. And there were some rumors on Twitter saying if you had bought $10 million of World Liberty Fi, they would return the favor and buy $10 million of your coin, which is why they've bought some of this other, random stuff. So I don't know. Like, I think there's not much more to read into that. I think it's nice to see that you have a large buying of Ethereum, but I don't really I don't know, like I guess that group could lobby for the government to include ETH in their plans and more stuff they're doing. You would think that kind of makes sense. Maybe it's that obvious and it's just staring at us blank in the face and no one wants to play in it. I'm not really sure, but I'm for now taking the stance there's not too much to read into it, I think. Speaking of, any thoughts on Ondo? That's definitely one that those guys have been buying.
Ondo is an interesting one because it's now going down the L1 route as well. I like it more than I've liked it in the past. My general view is that a lot of they've been one of the people hand-holding some of the tokenization efforts, particularly for treasuries. I've always thought that the TradFi firms would kind of just do this themselves. Like I think JP Morgan would have its own RWA platform, as would all the other banks, because it's probably valuable proprietary tech to have. But now it's going down the L1 route. It doesn't necessarily have to be where the have to help these firms get on the blockchain. It just really has to be where they go. And I think that's maybe a slightly stronger argument. So in this world of maybe DeFi being a bit stronger if we chop, I do think Ondo could be an interesting one because it will be tied to the RWA narrative.
Yeah, agreed. I don't have any additional thoughts on that. Next question: 3% of my portfolio is in memes, Mog, Giga, and Pepe. Is it a good idea to cut my losses and move it to Sui or virtuals?
I wouldn't buy virtuals. That's one thing I wouldn't buy. I think virtuals as a platform is really going through the ringer at the moment. I think only 7 agents were created yesterday, for example. I think there are stronger plays out there on the infra side, in my opinion, or marketplace side than virtuals. Pepe, Mog, and what was the third one?
Giga.
Yeah. I mean, they are in the stronger category of memes, but you might be there for a while. If you're just going to get frustrated that these maybe underperform some of the L1s, maybe it does feel. It's tough to think that Pepe is not a multi-cycle meme, right? But Giga and Mog, I think, are about to be questioned here a little bit. So I'd maybe keep the Pepe and cut the other two.
I think, yeah, I've said my view on memes. Like, I think meme coins will just underperform AI, underperform Bitcoin, perhaps even other L1s for the rest of this year. Does that mean now is the right time to sell? Maybe not, because a lot of these meme coins are down, 80, 90% in a short time frame. And even though I think they'll underperform over a longer period of time, you may have random dead cat bounces and that kind of stuff. And, for example, PopCat got listed by Coinbase, and that was up. I mean, it's not even up that much. It's up 20% on that news. Before that would cause things to go up like 2 or 3x. So I think if it was me, if I had that position, I would look to scale out of it, but I would maybe try and find a day when meme coins are up versus everything else, because I do think you will probably find that day. And 3% of your portfolio is not a large amount anyway, so it's not. Well, I don't want to assume it's not a large amount, absolutely, but as a percentage, relative to your portfolio, it's small, so it's not. I think not the end of the world. What is your opinion of Monero? Have you looked at that at all?
Monero.
Yeah.
These are the privacy chains.
Yeah.
I haven't looked that much into them, other than it feels as though they maybe have a stronger tailwind here because of the throwing out of the Tornado Cash case. I think in one state, I think it was Texas.
Yep.
It's difficult. There's a few different players in that privacy chain world. My honest view is that some of the L1s will focus on privacy a little bit more. I think that's been one of the explicit aims of Vitalik, rather than buying a privacy chain. itself. One of the existing, like, very popular ones.
Yeah, I agree. I think that stuff had a bounce after the tornado case, and perhaps perhaps if we see more of that, you could see some capital go back into it. But other than that, no real strong view. Do you think if the US plans to build a Bitcoin reserve, they'll purposefully say they won't first to dump the market so that they can pack their bags?
No, I don't. I think the Bitcoin reserve largely will probably just take over the confiscated Bitcoin to start. You may hear about other ways that they're buying it, but I think it would more be stealth. I don't think they'll give you a red herring and say we're not going to approve it and then approve it. I think that they're more likely to just buy it in secret and tell you they've already bought it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you have to remember, like, their bags are already packed, right? The US owns what it is, like $18-20 billion of Bitcoin. So there's nothing, they don't need to even really front run it. I think it's already in their favor. Also, I don't think the government's going to start buying Bitcoin and then say, "Oh, we've just announced it, and by the way, we've already bought it." I think there's probably going to be a bit more of a process to it as well. So, I don't foresee anything like that. Next question. I've lost my page. Any update on GLI and ISM? I don't know if you looked at those numbers this week. The ISM manufacturing PMI, I think, climbed to like 51 or 50.9, was it? Earlier in the week. Is that something that you've been monitoring or looking at?
That we're having a slightly stronger ISM. Look,
Yeah.
I think for me, that points to a slightly less benign financial conditions situation here. Like that unemployment, for example, again, the unemployment level came in lower again today. I think it's less likely that the Fed at least will be as accommodative as we want it to be.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because like today we had payrolls coming below expectations, unemployment rate coming below expectations.
They massively revised last year.
Revised last month.
Yeah.
And then you had wage inflation higher than expected. So it's kind of like a bit of a mixed bag, really. Like it wasn't really, for me, it ended up just, I guess, feeling neutral. I guess the market liked it because we started to rally a bit before the Michigan survey. But yeah, kind of like a mixed bag. I still don't really know if like good is bad and bad is good and all that. Like we just seem to be glazing past it a bit, and just it all really depends on what Powell says at the FOMC. And I think the market hasn't necessarily done a good job of extrapolating these numbers to what Powell's going to say, because the hawkish FOMC caught everyone off guard in November, and then the FOMC this month or last month caught everyone off guard as well, because it was like less hawkish or maybe slightly dovish than what people expected. So I'm more focused on like FOMC for what governs market mood rather than these numbers, because I think we're just not doing a good job of extrapolating these numbers unless we see a clearer trend in them. All right, we're over time, but we'll just do one last question because we started a little bit late. If you are to start investing in crypto this day and age, how would you allocate $500 every month for a long-term investment? I think you know what I'm going to say, but what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, if you're really looking for a long-term investment, you gotta own Bitcoin. But the only other thing I would think it would be JLP. That's it.
Yeah, I would say Bitcoin. I think it's hard for me to see long-term, which I'm assuming is in excess of 1 year. It's hard for me to underwrite anything other than Bitcoin, I think. Cool. All right. I think that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks everyone for listening to REKT Vision. Before we go, question for you guys. Have we finally hit the peak Bitcoin dominance level, or is there more pain to come for alts? Please let us know what you think in the comments. Make sure you're following us on X, REKT Mando, OSF_REKT, and please sign up to Real Vision Crypto at realvision.com/RVC to access our exclusive monthly AMAs. We will be back next week at the usual time, Friday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, guys.